So judgment will be handed down in the Life Esidimeni inquest today in the Pretoria High Court. The tragedy dates back to 2016, where 144 patients with mental health problems died due to neglect and starvation. This after they were moved by the Gauteng Health Department from private Life Esidimeni healthcare to public health facilities. A formal inquest was set up in July 2021 by the NPA to investigate the deaths. Civil society group Section 27 represented some of the families at the inquest. Let's speak to their senior legal researcher now, Tendai Mafuma, for more on the story. Tendai, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think what we can all agree on is that this is a day that has long been coming. And in fact, what we've been saying this morning is the issue dates back to 2016. This is when these patients were moved from Life Esidimeni. But for Section 27, it goes back before that, right? And perhaps we can give us that backstory of even before these patients were removed, Section 27 tried to step in. Give us that backstory as we build up to where we are now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me this morning, Naledi, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, we've all been waiting for this date for the inquest judgment to come out. But like you said, this started way before 2016. Around 2014, we found out that the Gauteng Department of Health intended to cancel the contract that it had with Life Esidimeni for about 30 years. In terms of that contract, mental health care users lived in Life Esidimeni facilities and received healthcare services that they needed. And the department decided to cancel this contract for various reasons, one of which was that they wanted to deinstitutionalize, which basically means taking people out of institutions and placing them within the communities. And some of the reasons was that the contract was too expensive. But what the department failed to do at that stage was to make sure that there were proper plans to have adequate facilities where these mental health care users, some of them who had been in these facilities for very long and needed critical care every day, every hour of their lives. They failed to make sure that they made sufficient plans to have adequate facilities for them when they were transferred from these facilities. Yeah. So like you rightly said, Section 27 tried to intervene to ask the department to do the right thing and make sure that the facilities that they were moving these vulnerable mental health care users were adequate.
Yeah, and then of course 2016 came about and these patients were moved to these NGOs, and some of them tortured, starved, 144 of them losing their lives. And this was a story that reached, I mean, it got international attention, right? Can we talk a little bit about that, around what the story was that we were telling the world about what happened to these 144 patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2016 came around and the department started moving mental health care users out of Life Esidimeni facilities. This was done very hastily. Families of the mental health care facilities were not properly informed about where their loved ones would be moved. Some of them were moved without their mental health care records, so the people who received them into their care did not know what their diagnosis was and what care they needed. The facilities were not licensed properly. They were not given enough funding. They were also structurally not suitable. You know, some of them had stairs, some of them had converted their garages, and it was winter, it was cold. They were not properly insulated. They didn't have mental health care providers to help these mental health care users transition from care that they were so used to, and now they were just, dispersed around the country. So this came to the public eye, and we had the Ombudsman investigate. Initially, it was the Ombudsman who investigated what were the causes of mental health care users dying in these facilities. And he came up with a really damning report on the state of mental health care in Gauteng. And he also had recommendations of what should be done. And he made several recommendations, some of them relating to mental health care, the state of mental health care in Gauteng and what the department needed to do. Some of them had related to what should happen to the professional to the officials who had been involved, whether they should stay in their jobs, whether they should face disciplinary action. And then the one major one that I think everyone in the country is aware of was the arbitration, where the
Yes.
Ombudsman said there must be a process of alternate dispute resolution where the families are given a space to really talk about what had happened to their loved ones and how it had impacted them and how the country how the state had failed them
Yeah.
and violated various rights of the mental health care users. And in that process, there must be compensation for the families.
And that arbitration then took place with the leadership of Dikgang Moseneke, and at the end of it, some family members receiving 1 million rand. This is per claimant, right, at the end of that arbitration. Why was this inquest that we're seeing, this inquiry that we're talking about now today so important? Because, Mark Hayward, of course, of civil society as well, has said that there must be criminal culpability. But in the view of Section 27, who does that belong to? When you've got Makhabu Manamela, of course, a former Gauteng Health head, who said that assessments were done on these patients. Tendai Mafuma, former health MEC, said, no, the blame needs to be with the Premier. According to Section 27, who would you like to see face criminal culpability?
That's a really important question, Naledi. And first, I want to say the purpose of the inquest is very, very different from the arbitration, right? So the arbitration was to sort of compensate the families and the surviving mental health care users, because we mustn't forget that there were surviving mental health care users, to compensate for the violation of the rights. So those were constitutional damages for violation of guaranteed rights. Now, what the purpose of the inquest is to investigate and determine whether anyone can be held liable criminally for an unnatural death. So the underlying purpose is want to reassure the public and to build public confidence that whenever there is an unnatural death, it will be investigated. And if anyone can be held liable for it, charges will be pressed against them. So that's a really important part of the accountability that we speak of, that when people exercise power and there's been violation of rights, in this case leading to deaths, there must be criminal liability.
Yep.
And what we as Section 27 argued during the inquest was that the former MEC, who was Tendai Mafuma, and the former HOD, Dr. Manamela, and one of the owners of the NGOs where mental health care users were sent, who was Ethel Ngube of Precious Angels, should be charged with culpable homicide for the death of the healthcare users who were sent into their care. And we felt that these parties were really key to the implementation of the whole transfer of mental health care users. They received patients who they knew they couldn't care for, and as a result, these people died. And we think that there should be criminal liability arising from their conduct.
Yeah. What's the view of the families? I mean, if you don't see the ruling that you're hoping for today, what do you think the message will be to them?
Importantly, the families have really been resilient and they have pushed on with this matter throughout. And so it's a day that they've been waiting for to see the outcome. Like we said, we made these arguments, and I would want to see an argument that leads to criminal liability. And so that is what we're really hoping for. And I think credit should be given to the families for sticking out with this very long process. I mean, the inquest itself started in August 2021, and we're only getting judgment today. And they're really waiting to see how the court will find. And hopefully from those findings, the NPA will be able to take it forward and do what they need to do to hold people accountable.
Yeah, this came to mind earlier this morning about how I suppose the work done by the Ombud, the Health Ombud, Malekapuru, with really by the instruction of the then Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, led obviously to this process. And now we sit at what one could argue is a full circle moment. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi is once again the health minister as we see this ruling, this judgment set to come out from the Pretoria High Court today. I suppose a moment that if you could speak to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi at this moment around the lessons that you hope he learned through his previous tenure as health minister around, really watching the governance that are made through the various governance structures and ranks, right? What would that be?
We hope that there will be implementation of recommendations from the various accountability structures when they do investigate issues such as this. For instance, what they did with the recommendations from the Ombud, and also just seeing through processes of, similar to the arbitration and engaging with civil society like they did throughout the process, because ultimately, what we want is the realization of the right to health. And so coming together and sharing our ideas on how we can improve healthcare services, not only in Gauteng, because as the minister, he's responsible for the entire country, and working with civil society and also listening to the healthcare users who use these services, because they have first-hand experiences of their engagement with the facilities and how we can improve them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we hope that will be some of the things that he would do.
Yeah. Tendai, thank you so much for speaking to us. I suppose we'll catch up with the Section 27 after that judgment has been handed down. Tendai Mafuma, senior legal researcher at Section 27. Of course, they've been representing some of the families that lost family members to that Life Esidimeni tragedy. All right, it is...